Bullying in the workplace hasn't gone away even during the pandemic. In a new survey, 43% of remote workers say they've been bullied, most often in virtual meetings. And despite what many people believe, those bulliers aren't always men. According to the Workplace Bullying Institute, men are far more likely to be the bullies than women. Even so, women make up 33% of bullies on the job, and 65% of their targets are other women. Women target men about 35% of the time. The survey also found that the majority of women bullies are the boss. I recently asked Philadelphia executive coach Erin Jewel Gerst why a woman would target another woman. Erin, thanks so much for being with us today.
It's great to be here, Tracy. Thank you for having me.
What is bullying? When we say the word bullying, what are we talking about? What does that look like?
So one definition of bullying, and there are a few, is any behavior that seeks to harm, intimidate, or coerce. And it is a consistent action. So if it's an isolated event or a one-time, one-off thing, that is not considered bullying.
And are we talking about bosses, or are we talking about peers that are doing this?
Well, it's happening across the board. There is a syndrome, a phenomenon known as Queen Bee syndrome, where, and I say some of these words, and my desire is for all of us to transcend such gender biased descriptions. However, there's a phenomenon known as Queen Bee syndrome, where as a woman rises up the ranks, so to speak, in an organization, there are those that become more likely to exhibit discriminatory behavior, in particular toward other women.
And so again, what does bullying look like? Give us an example. Is it just shutting somebody's idea down in a meeting? What does it look like?
Right. So, and as I mentioned before, bullying generally is a consistent practice. So it's something that it's a behavior that grows or accumulates over time. There are many, many, many examples of it. And truthfully, so many individuals have almost become desensitized to it because it is generally a more common practice. So bullying can be consistently dismissive behavior towards someone. It can be consistent intimidation, which can be overt, or it can also be more of a passive or passive-aggressive approach. So, that dismissive behavior being not responding over purposely, intentionally. It has a lot to do with intention, by the way. Intentionally not responding to an individual's requests or needs, both in a role of as a direct report and otherwise. It can also show up in the form of triangulation. So one kind of common term for triangulation is more kind of like gossip, and where the individual's character is being brought into question through conversations with other individuals consistently. So these are just a few examples.
And I'm sure when you are being bullied, you know it instinctually. What's the first step a woman who feels like she's being bullied by another woman in the workplace? What can they do? What's the first step?
Well, it's a great point that you make, Tracy. And the interesting thing about this is women don't always know when they are being bullied. They do feel there are, and by the way, as we're talking about women today, bullying happens to everyone, all individuals and all humans. And today's focus just happens to be those who identify as female. But when it does happen, a lot of times women are not reporting it. There are also studies to support that. They just kind of write it off as it is what it is. That's how so-and-so is. That's just who they are. So, but some of the things that a woman can do to answer your question is, number one, acknowledge it, embrace it, recognize it for what it is, that it is a challenge and that they do find themselves in this situation, not just writing it off and saying it is what it is, not making the behavior okay. Two, something else they can do is they can talk about it, not triangulation, right? Not in the sense of just going around and having general conversations about it, but talking with a support system, perhaps a mentor or a coach, or even the best approach sometimes is to go to the individual directly and very respectfully call out the behavior. So those are two steps, and really there's a third step too, and this third step is beyond the bullying behavior, which is to acknowledge that this is happening in our humanity as a whole and doing our part to support each other in more honorable and respectful ways.
Yeah, I'm wondering if women who have been bullied even put that label on it. So you really have to, I guess, be very aware of what's happening and how it makes you feel. What about, you mentioned the queen bee syndrome. What if it comes back to you, guess what? You're acting like a queen bee. Like, you have to make some changes. Where does that come from for that woman who is pushing others down as she tries to rise? And how do they change?
Well, and it's a great point. So physiologically speaking, it is actually in our DNA as women to compete for resources. Okay. So originally, back in the day, women had to compete for resources for their offspring. They had to compete for mates. So there's actually a part of us, a small part of us, that doesn't really serve very much of a purpose anymore, that still exists. So there's a really good chance that we have actually, most of us, bullied and have been bullied in our lifetime. So if we find ourselves in that position where it's being brought to our attention, I would say we would want to consider ourselves lucky and that we've been given this opportunity to face this and correct it.
And make things right and change our behavior. All really good advice. Erin Jewel Gerst, thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Tracy.
Chanel in Philadelphia, reopening America Today series. She's kicking it off.
Isn't this a beautiful city? This city is very close to my heart.
They're looking at how our city has bounced back.
How are they reacting when they get that shot of hope?
A lot of tears. A first-hand look at the triumphs and struggles of a city.
In the city of brotherly love, we need each other, and we're a community.
The People's Kitchen Project take all of those meals and donate them to people who are hungry.
Good morning and welcome to Philly Live. I like this. Can we start every show dancing?
Hi, I'm here to apply for the mascot position.
Oh, we don't hire mascots.
But you're an insurance company. You gotta have a mascot.
Yeah, that's not really our thing. I'm so sorry.